My sister kissed my BF a week before her wedding. Her fiancé's shocking revenge left everyone speechless. Never thought I'd be the one to ruin a wedding, especially my sister's. But sometimes the truth has a way of exploding at the worst possible moment. I'm Abby, and I'm 20 years old, living in a small town in Colorado where everyone knows everyone's business. Last month, I walked into a scene that shattered my world, and it all happened in the middle of what was supposed to be a joyful time, my younger sister Lauren's wedding preparations. It was a chilly Saturday evening in early October, just a week before her big day, and I was at my parents' house, knee-deep in napkins and ribbon, trying to help make her dream wedding come true. Our parents' house was buzzing with people. Mom, a 48-year-old elementary school teacher with a knack for organizing, was in the kitchen baking a batch of her famous snickerdoodles for the wedding favors. "Abby, make sure those swans are even," she called out, her voice muffled by the sound of the mixer. Dad, a 50-year-old electrician who's more into fishing than wedding planning, was in the garage tinkering with his old truck, probably trying to avoid the chaos. Lauren's best friend, Chloe, a 19-year-old with bubblegum pink hair and a laugh that could wake the dead, was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone and giggling at TikToks. And then there's our Aunt Maggie, a 55-year-old florist who's been roped into helping with the centerpieces, muttering to herself about how peonies are so overrated as she arranges flowers on the dining table. I was actually in a pretty good mood, despite the stress of the wedding prep. My boyfriend, Nick, a 21-year-old mechanic with a crooked smile that always makes me melt, had come over to help. He'd been joking around with me all evening, sneaking bites of Mom's cookie dough when she wasn't looking and teasing me about my napkin swans. "Babe, these look more like ducks than swans," he said, holding one up with a grin. I swatted his arm, laughing. "Shut up, they're perfect!" It was one of those moments where everything felt right until it wasn't. Lauren had been flitting around the house all day, acting like the princess she thinks she is. She's always been spoiled. Mom and Dad let her get away with everything growing up, and it's made her insufferable at times. She'd been barking orders at everyone, complaining about the shade of ivory on the tablecloths and whining that her dress didn't fit right, even though she'd had 3 fittings. I was used to her drama, so I just rolled my eyes and kept folding napkins. But then she disappeared upstairs with Nick to grab some extra ribbon from her room, and they were gone for way too long. I started to get a weird feeling in my gut. Nick had been acting a little off all week, distant, distracted, always on his phone. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake it. So I decided to go check on them. I climbed the stairs, my sneakers squeaking on the hardwood, and as I reached the top, I heard muffled voices coming from Lauren's room. The door was cracked open just enough for me to see inside, and what I saw made my heart stop. There they were, Lauren and Nick locked in a kiss. She had her arms around his neck, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his shoulders, and he was kissing her back, his hands on her waist. For a second, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My little sister, who was about to get married in a week, was making out with my boyfriend in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by her wedding dress and a pile of ribbon. I must have made a sound, a gasp, a sob. I don't know, because they both jumped apart, their faces guilty as hell. "Abby, wait!" Nick stammered, stepping toward me, but I was already backing away, my vision blurring with tears. Lauren just stood there, her lips still red from his kiss, and had the audacity to roll her eyes. "Oh, come on, Abby, don't be so dramatic," she said, flipping her hair like this was no big deal. I couldn't even form words. I turned and ran downstairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. All I could think about was how I'd been betrayed not just by Nick, but by my own sister, the one person I was supposed to be able to trust. I stumbled down the stairs, my chest tight and my vision blurry with tears. The living room, which had felt so warm and festive just moments ago, now seemed suffocating. The cinnamon scent from Mom's candles mixed with the sugary aroma of her snickerdoodles, but instead of comforting me, it made my stomach churn. Lauren's wedding playlist was still playing some upbeat pop song that felt painfully out of place, and Chloe was still on the couch, laughing at her phone, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Aunt Maggie looked up from her flower arrangements, her glasses slipping down her nose. "Abby, you okay, hon?" she asked, her voice soft but concerned. I couldn't answer. I just shook my head and bolted for the front door, grabbing my jacket off the hook as I went. The cool October air hit me like a slap as I stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking under my sneakers. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stop the shaking, and sank onto the steps, the fairy lights Mom had strung up for the wedding casting a soft glow around me. My mind was racing, replaying the image of Lauren and Nick over and over, her arms around his neck, his hands on her waist, the way they jumped apart when they saw me. I felt like I was going to be sick. How could they do this to me? Lauren, my little sister, who I'd always looked out for even when she didn't deserve it. And Nick, the guy I'd been with for 2 years, who I thought I could trust with my whole heart. I don't know how long I sat there, the chilly air biting at my cheeks. But eventually, I heard the door creak open behind me. It was Nick. He stepped out, his hands shoved in his pockets, his face pale. "Abby, can we talk?" he said, his voice low, almost pleading. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. "Talk about what, Nick?" I snapped, my voice cracking. "How you were just making out with my sister a week before her wedding. Or how you've been lying to me for who knows how long." He flinched, but he didn't back down. "It wasn't like that," he said, sitting down on the step beside me, even though I didn't invite him to. "It just happened. We were talking, and she started crying about the wedding, saying she wasn't sure if she was ready. And then, I don't know, Abby. It was a mistake." A mistake. The word echoed in my head, but it didn't make me feel any better. I turned to him, my eyes burning with tears. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk, Nick. Kissing my sister isn't a mistake, it's a choice." He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up a hand to stop him. "I don't want to hear it. Just leave me alone." He hesitated, then stood up, his shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry, Abby," he muttered before walking back inside, the door closing softly behind him. I sat there for a while longer, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to storm back upstairs and confront Lauren, to scream at her until she felt even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But another part of May, a bigger part, knew that wouldn't fix anything. Lauren would just turn it around on me, like she always did, and I'd end up looking like the bad guy. No, I needed to do something bigger. Something that would make her face the consequences of what she'd done. And that's when I thought of David, Lauren's fiancé. David was 24, a quiet, kind guy who worked as a graphic designer and had been nothing but good to Lauren since they got engaged last year. He didn't deserve this, not from her, not from anyone. I pulled out my phone, my hands still trembling, and scrolled through my contacts until I found his number. It was late, almost 9 p.m., but I didn't care. I needed to tell him. I hit the call button and waited, my heart pounding as it rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally, he picked up. "Abby? Hey, what's up?" he said, his voice warm but a little confused. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "David, I need to tell you something," I said, my voice shaking. "It's about Lauren." I told him everything, how I'd caught her kissing Nick, how they didn't even try to deny it, how she'd rolled her eyes like it was no big deal. I expected him to be angry, to yell, to demand answers, but he was silent. For a long, agonizing minute, he didn't say a word. "David, are you there?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, I'm here," he said finally, his tone flat. "Thanks for telling me, Abby. I need to think about this." And then he hung up. I stared at my phone, my stomach twisting. He hadn't sounded angry or upset, just numb. I started to wonder if I'd made a mistake by telling him. If this story is shocking you as much as it shocked me, hit that like button and let me know in the comments, what would you do if your sister betrayed you like this? Maybe he'd ignore it. Sweep it under the rug to keep the peace. After all, the wedding was in a week, and there was so much pressure to go through with the hundreds of guests, a venue, a caterer, all the money Mom and Dad had spent. Maybe David would just pretend it never happened. But as I sat there on the porch, the fairy lights twinkling above me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just set something in motion, something I couldn't control. The week leading up to Lauren's wedding was a blur of guilt, anger, and heartbreak. I couldn't bring myself to go back to my parents' house after that night. I told Mom I wasn't feeling well and needed to rest at my apartment. She bought it, probably because she was too busy with the wedding to notice how shaky my voice was on the phone. But the truth was, I couldn't face Lauren. I couldn't look at her without seeing her lips on Nick's, without hearing her dismissive, "Don't be so dramatic," echoing in my head. And Nick. He'd been texting me nonstop, begging me to talk to him, but I ignored every message. I didn't have the energy to deal with him, not yet. By the time the wedding day rolled around, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going. I couldn't stand there in a bridesmaid dress, smiling for pictures, pretending everything was fine while my heart was in pieces. I felt betrayed by Lauren, abandoned by Nick, and guilty for telling David guilty, for potentially ruining what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. So I stayed home, curled up on my couch in an old hoodie and sweatpants, a half-eaten pint of mint chocolate chip ice cream melting on the coffee table. My apartment was quiet. The only sound, the soft hum of the radiator and the occasional chirp of my phone as friends and family texted me updates from the wedding. I didn't read them. I didn't want to know. I spent the day trying to figure out how to move forward. How do you heal from a betrayal like this? How do you trust your family, your own sister, after something so cruel? I thought about cutting Lauren out of my life completely, but that would mean losing Mom and Dad too, and I wasn't ready for that. I thought about confronting her after the wedding, demanding an apology, but I knew she'd never give me one. Lauren didn't do apologies, she did excuses. And then there was David. I kept wondering what he was thinking, what he was feeling. Had he confronted Lauren? Had he decided to go through with the wedding anyway? I felt a pang of guilt every time I thought about him, wondering if I'd done the right thing by telling him the truth. Around 6 p.m., as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky outside my window turned a deep shade of purple, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was my cousin Kate, a 22-year-old nursing student who'd always been more like a sister to me than Lauren ever was. She was at the wedding, probably calling to guilt-trip me for not showing up. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. "Abby, oh my God, you're not going to believe what just happened," Kate said the second I answered, her voice a mix of shock and excitement. She was talking so fast I could barely keep up, and I could hear the faint sound of chaos in the background, murmured voices, a chair scraping, someone crying. "Slow down, Kate," I said, sitting up on the couch, my heart starting to race. "What happened? Is everything okay?" Kate took a deep breath, and I could practically hear her trying to collect herself. "It was the wedding, Abby. Everything was going fine at first. Lauren looked gorgeous in her dress. The church was packed, and the ceremony started like something out of a fairy tale. But then, when it was time for the vows, David stepped forward and he called the whole thing off." I froze, my grip tightening on the phone. "What do you mean he called it off?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Kate's voice dropped, like she was trying not to be overheard. "He stood up there, in front of everyone, Mom, Dad, all the guests, and said he couldn't marry Lauren. He said he knew what she did, how she betrayed you by kissing Nick, and he couldn't go through with it. Lauren went pale, Abby. She started crying, begging him to stop, but he just kept going. He even turned to your parents and asked why you weren't there, why you'd been avoiding the family all week. It was insane." I sat there, stunned, as Kate kept talking, her words washing over me like a tidal wave. The wedding had descended into chaos after David's announcement. Guests were whispering, trying to figure out what was going on, while Lauren's sobs echoed through the church. Mom and Dad were in shock, their faces pale as they tried to comfort Lauren, who was now a mess of tears and mascara at the altar. David had walked out, his head held high, leaving Lauren to face the fallout alone. Kate said it was like something out of a movie. 1 minute. Everyone was smiling and taking pictures, and the next, the whole day had imploded. I listened to Kate's story in a daze, my emotions a tangled mess of relief, guilt, and sadness. Part of me felt vindicated. Lauren's betrayal had been exposed, and she couldn't hide behind her perfect little facade anymore. But another part of me felt awful for my family, for the embarrassment they must have felt in front of all those guests. I could picture Mom's face, her hands trembling as she tried to hold it together, and Dad's quiet disappointment as he stood by Lauren's side, probably wishing he was anywhere else. I knew they'd be furious with me for not showing up, for telling David, for setting this whole chain of events in motion, but I also knew I'd done the right thing. David deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. Kate stayed on the phone with me for a while, filling me in on the details. After David walked out, the church had erupted into chaos. Some guests left immediately, whispering to each other as they hurried to their cars, while others stayed, trying to comfort Lauren or get the full story from Mom and Dad. Lauren's best friend Chloe had tried to take charge, announcing that the reception was canceled and telling everyone to please respect the family's privacy. But Kate said the damage was done, people were already gossiping, and by morning, the whole town would know what happened. "It's a mess, Abby," Kate said, her voice softer now. "But honestly, I'm proud of you for telling David. Lauren had it coming." I thanked Kate for calling and hung up, my hands still trembling as I set the phone down. I sat there on my couch, the ice cream now a melted puddle on the coffee table, and tried to process everything. I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that the truth was out, anger at Lauren for what she'd done, and sadness for the rift this would cause in our family. I knew things would never be the same between me and Lauren, and maybe not between me and my parents either. They'd always taken her side, always made excuses for her, and I had a feeling they'd blame me for this, even though I wasn't the one who cheated. In the days that followed, I heard more about the fallout. David had moved out of the apartment he and Lauren shared, and he'd blocked her on everything: phone, social media, even email. Lauren, meanwhile, had gone into full victim mode, telling anyone who'd listen that I'd ruined her life by telling David. She even had the nerve to text me, a long, rambling message about how I was jealous of her and had always wanted to sabotage her happiness. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was done with her drama, done with her lies. Nick tried to reach out too, leaving voicemails apologizing and begging me to give him another chance. But I deleted them without listening. I didn't have the energy to deal with him, not now, maybe not ever. I spent a lot of time thinking about what to do next. I knew I needed to talk to my parents eventually, to explain my side of the story, but I wasn't ready yet. For now, I focused on healing on myself, on the friendships that mattered, like the one I had with Kate. She came over a few days after the wedding, bringing a box of donuts and a bottle of cheap wine, and we spent the evening talking, laughing, and crying. "You're better off without them, Abby," she said, squeezing my hand. "Lauren and Nick, they don't deserve you." I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. She was right. I deserved better, and I was determined to find it. But even as I tried to move forward, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment in Lauren's room, the way she'd kissed Nick like it was nothing, the way she'd dismissed my pain like I didn't matter. I wondered if she'd ever realize the damage she'd done, not just to me, but to our whole family. I wondered if she'd ever feel even a fraction of the hurt I felt. And I wondered what I'd do the next time I saw Hera, if I'd ever be able to look at her without feeling that betrayal all over again. If you enjoyed this crazy story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more Reddit tales. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Ale and divorced.